Well, good evening, everyone. Do it live. How's everyone doing? Please give me a thumbs up if the sound quality is fine. Anyone in the chat. My name is Matonizz, aka Matonizz. This is my colleague Michael Dingfelder, also known as Ding. And welcome to this live chat. Please give this video a thumbs up, share it with your friend, hit that subscribe button and notification button for all the upcoming live streams. And hello, Brazil. How are you doing, Michael? Well, they're saying hello every single stream, so.
It must be, I can't see any of the things, so I can't see any of the questions or comments or nothing until like you say them to me.
Okay, I think your sound was a little too loud. Let me just quickly correct that. Hello, Ellen. How are you doing? Say hello to Ellen. I don't think she missed a single live stream. Must be our most loyal subscriber. That's awesome.
Yeah, she has some good questions.
Good questions. Yeah. Keep on going with the questions. By the way, everyone who would like to get their questions answered, please leave them in the chat, preferably with a question mark at the end, so I would know that that's a question. Okay. His sound is very quiet. Hugh's sound. Can you say something, Mike? Can you say something?
Hey, what's up, world? How's my volume coming through?
Still too quiet. Okay, can anyone indicate whose sound too quiet? Is it my sound too quiet or Mike's sound too quiet? That would help a lot because my software is showing that we're both equally loud. Also, I was just telling Mike right before we went in the stream that my week was pretty thrilling. I think I fried my computer, so I'm in the midst of building a new one, and I'm actually going to build it. I found a guy from... Mike is too quiet. Okay, let me bump that up. Mike, go ahead. Just can you just use your diaphragm when you speak? Just a little bit more, you know? Okay, that should be better. Mike sound. Okay, Mark is tuning in. Say hello to Mark.
Mark.
Okay, you should be a little bit louder now. Sounds too far away. We need to get you a microphone, man. I'll hook you up with a microphone. Mike is taking the isolation thing very seriously, so it's impossible to get in touch with him. I'll probably send him a microphone through mail or something. The best euphonium section ever. Thank you very much. I agree with that. Definitely the best one, and and the most humble one. Okay, that being said, a great week. I think I fried my computer also. I don't know if Mike Zuckerberg is a fan of our live stream, but if you're watching Mike Zuckerberg, can you please tell me why you restricted me from sharing my post in my own group? So here's a funny story for everyone. I woke up.
Is he related to Mark Zuckerberg?
Mike? Oh, whatever. Whatever. Let's call him Mr. Zuckerberg. I woke up this a couple days ago and I found that Facebook sent me a notification that I violated the guidelines, not indicating what guidelines I violated or like how long is the restriction for, what exactly restriction means. I know that I'm not allowed to post in my own group, which I'm the only person that that group only has one person that can post in that group, which is me. So I'm trying to figure out what's happening with that. But hey, by the way, just in case Mr. Mark Zuckerberg is a big fan of our live chat, can you please explain me what the heck? I also did the appeal and they told me thank you very much for your feedback. So
obviously you did something wrong.
Well, my theory is that you brought those crunchy cookies and it's your promotion of junk food that cost me
Nabisco would never do something like that.
All right. Well, that being said, no more crunchy cookies. I found the solution. Okay, let's go to some questions. I've got some questions printed out as always, but let's start with a question since we encouraged Ellen to ask one, and she already did. Okay, what would you like to tell composers and arrangers what the euphonium can do and not do? First of all, no multiphonics, please. it does not sound cool. So cool. It only sounds cool for an exclusive number of few euphonium players. So no multiphonics in serious pieces because you don't get two normal voices. But with all seriousness, it's interesting. With euphonium pieces, I find that there's no middle ground. We have very few. It's either Lance used to. I'm sure you're familiar with that joke. Lance, my former teacher, Lance Leduc, used to always tell that we only play Blazing Fast or Danny Boy. So that's more or less our repertoire. So I guess it's always been at least my observation with original compositions. With original compositions is that I'm looking at the comments about your sound. Now I understand what the problem is. I'll fix that. But either way, my understanding with compositions would be that they are often targeted more towards displaying skill than actually doing music. That the only I only know very few concertos that are obviously targeted not towards display the range or virtuosity of a player, because most of the pieces are written for like 5 euphonium players. You could probably name them: Bowman, Mead, etc. And it's always starts super slow, something very high, and blazing fast. Not necessarily. I'm not saying that the pieces of music are bad or not, but we don't have any Hummel or Haydn type of trumpet, not trumpet, but concertos or pieces, which would be targeted towards a general with the priority of general musicianship, at least in my opinion. So what I would tell is in terms of a technical aspect, that hey, euphonium is always lagging in projection and clarity, so make sure that the accompaniment is not too dense, and just do not necessarily focus on blazing fast technique. Because normally euphonium is a very exotic instrument for composers. They ask you, because I've done composer classes where you come in and they ask you to show the register, and what I can show in terms of a register and speed does not necessarily reflect in terms of what you should be composing for. And I feel that usually that's what happens with most of euphonium pieces. You have it's a very niche type of community, so whenever you have a new composer coming to the scene who wants to know a little bit about euphonium, they find the best euphonium player, and it does not reflect the reality so much. So that'll be my suggestions for composers. Any intake on this? Yeah. I think we're having problems with the sound. Give me 1 second. My apologies. I will correct that in one moment. I know what the problem is. Give me 1 second. We can't hear. Yep. Okay. One moment. I'll fix this problem straight away. Hopefully. Okay. So just bear with me for a second. um, I think you should be able to hear me. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Okay, so here's the deal. For some reason, my software is just being completely dumb, and it might be a problem with my PC. So what you're going to be hearing is mic coming through my microphone, because normally it's supposed to be going through a separate source, and it's just not doing what it's supposed to be. So my apologies for that. Again, I mentioned at the beginning of the live stream that my computer, I believe I fried it somehow yesterday. So my apologies, but just roll with this. Can somebody just tell me? Can somebody just tell me? Let me ask Birute whether Mike is on. Can you say something, Mike?
Hey, how's the sound coming through? Is it any better, any worse?
Okay, let me just quickly get. Well, that's at least entertaining. So. Okay, so I'm gonna do one thing. We're gonna have to roll with this. Let's be creative. So this is directional microphone. So each time you speak, I'm gonna roll the microphone towards your side. But we're only hearing. Yeah, I know.
They're only hearing what, you?
No, they're hearing you on the microphone. Okay. Again, my apologies for this live stream. Just at this point, I'll have to end the stream in order to reconnect everything. It's just I tried changing the interfaces because I'm speaking through my mixer, which is I think the line in or the computer has fried. So I need to figure this out. But that being said, we'll just have to roll with it now. That being said, continue with your thought, and let me just try this. No, I'll have to end the live stream. Let's just roll with this. Okay? And I can see that people people are saying that they can hear you just a little bit more quiet. It's not balanced sound, so they can hear you fine, just a little quieter. So if somebody's using headphones, I don't know. My apologies. Let's just roll with it. They can hear you, just a little quiet.
Just nice sounding pieces. Everything just sounds like a technical exercise for the most part, or it's just wild and out there with different meters and meter changes and things like that. So I'm a big fan of just a nice melody.
By the way, did I mention my grapefruit flavored seltzer water? It's not a soda, by the way. To all the sugar haters, I'm one of them. So it's okay. It's 0 calories, just a sparkling water. That being said, a great question. I really like that question. I'm seeing some funny comments about this. Okay, let's go to some more questions. People are saying that your sound is far away. Your sound is as far away as my last shave. Okay, it's getting to the point. Please, can someone find me a barber? I've heard people doing this distant hair cutting where they get in touch with a barber and they give the directions to the husband or the wife or the friend or whatever, and they just cut it through Skype or something. But I really need to get one. Okay. Let's go to some questions that are received, this time coming from Belarus. How about that? We talked a lot about Brazil. Shout out to Belarus. Okay, Artem is asking, I myself play the trumpet and I understand that the principle of the game is the same as on the trumpet and baritone or euphonium. I tried to put the mouthpiece under the bottom lip as you have on the video on YouTube, but I don't understand how much I need to put it under the lower lip, how the lower jaw should work, and how to understand the angle of the instrument relative to the teeth. I will be very glad if you could answer. Let me just quickly put a timestamp. So I don't know whether you're aware of what video is being referred to, but I made a video where I was I think either critiquing a young student you had a mouthpiece or really low, and I was showing a good method, especially for euphonium, and not only euphonium players, to find a good positioning would be placing your mouthpiece under your bottom lip like this and just closing it. That'll probably line up to where it needs to be. That being said, a lot of this will depend on your teeth structure, okay? So unless you're seeing some ridiculous ratio where it's 90 to 10%, so 90% lower, 90% of the mouthpieces being placed at the bottom or vice versa, I would not necessarily try to do a bunch of corrections, because your mouthpiece will normally line up to where your teeth falls, and that is especially more of the case with the smaller mouthpieces, because you don't have a lot of wiggle room. With tuba and euphonium mouthpieces, you can do there's quite a bit of fluctuation for and space for error in terms of how you can play around with a mouthpiece, and there's a little bit more space for bad habit rather than just how your teeth are structured. So normally I always tell that you control the sound through opening. One of the main tools is opening the aperture or the lips between your lips. So if your sound is very tight, it's usually because your lips are being squeezed apart together, and you need to open the aperture just ever so slightly, and that will open up the sound. And you open up that by dropping your lower jaw, because that's the only portion of the face that can drop. That being said, we're talking about minute drop. It might feel like a lot, but it's a minute drop, and especially with small trumpet mouthpieces, you don't have a lot of room to manipulate all of this, so it has to be very centered. So I would not necessarily pay too much attention. This is a good way to line up. Just put it under your upper lip, bottom lip, and just close it. And where it stands, that's probably a good place for you to sit. Don't try to open up your jaw all too much on the trumpet, just because the centering is so small. But just if you feel like that sound is being very squeezed, just think of slightly opening your teeth. That would help quite a bit. Can you give a little bit of intake yourself on this one?
Yeah, hopefully people can hear me. With what you said, the extremes are never a good thing. If the mouthpiece placement is way too high to an extreme way, or way too low to an extreme way, it's just gonna your sound quality and your tone quality are really gonna suffer, and your ability to buzz your lips to get that good tone quality is just not going to be there. So extremes are bad in this case. What I would sort of recommend is try to center the mouthpiece and do some playing and some buzzing on that, and try to notice for your how you sound on the instrument. And if you have to make a little minor correction with placing it just a little bit higher or a little bit lower, like you said, the way that your face is formed and your teeth structure and your jaw and all of that stuff is going to play a part in where the mouthpiece is going to be the best fit for. There's no exact place that the mouthpiece should be for everyone. It's different on almost every single player. With my mouthpiece, whether I play trumpet or trombone or baritone, euphonium, I always tend to have it just a little bit higher than center whenever I play, and that just feels like where it fits the best for me whenever I play.
Yep, and that's usually the normal placement is supposed to be a little bit higher, just because overwhelming majority of people, the upper lip is thicker and larger than the bottom lip. So normally a little bit more of the cup is going to be targeted towards the top lip, just because if you look at it, most people have a slightly thicker upper lip. Now, again, in terms of how you line it up, one thing I always try to avoid is and correct is especially if I see it slipping towards the bottom. That's where I see a bigger problem than vice versa in most cases, because I try to simplify this a little bit more, but I treat the bottom lip a little bit more like a surface lip. I don't think that the lip itself does a lot of fluctuation at the bottom. I'm just trying to keep it flat. Whereas the top, I call it a direction lip. I don't know whether that even makes sense, or at least a good description of that. But I just feel that normally there's a little bit more movement in terms of the lip at the top, and the bottom is barely. It's not necessarily the lip, but the jaw is doing a lot of movement. And with trumpet. It will be smaller. Again, unless you have like a very distinct technical problem, which is glaring, I would not necessarily, I don't like using the word pay attention to, but I would not over concentrate on trying to find this perfect spot, because even if you find a spot that you feel that the sound flows a little bit better, that does not necessarily mean that you'll be able to get used to that, because your mouthpiece will eventually always end up lining up to where your teeth sets it. So hello to George. I see George tuning in. Say hello to George.
He won't hear me, but I'll just wave.
They'll hear you. For everyone who tuned in recently, my apologies again for the sound. I mentioned I had some equipment frying, so well, I'm working on it. I'm building a new PC. Apparently that is a thing now, so I need to get it replaced, but I'll get that sorted by next stream. Okay, let's go to some more questions. Let me put a timestamp. 20, 40, 40. Robin is asking, I have problems with my instrument. I do not find an exact comfort with it, neither with my mouthpiece nor with my sound. In fact, I've been with the instrument for a year, but I study a lot and I feel an improvement is very minimal. Any advice that can help me? I'll let you take this for now. That's
such a tough question. Well, first, I mean, if you've only been playing the instrument for a year, I mean, a lot of times, musical instruments and learning of an instrument really takes a long time and most of a lifetime. And there's always progress that comes in different spurts. Whenever I first started out on trumpet, it was a struggle when you're just learning. I'm not sure the age group of this person. That's why it's such a tough question on it. I mean, I would give it a little bit more time just to study and play, and to see if more progress is being made. It could be another thing too of just the instrument might not be a fit for you. There's some instruments that you might try to play, and it just might not be the instrument that you should be playing. I think anyone who's interested in playing an instrument should, but just some instruments fit better for people than others. Just a couple of thoughts on that, just off the top of my head.
all right. So what? And this question is it's a very broad question. So and actually, in fact, something I hear a lot. And here's my I'll be a little bit more straightforward. I don't think the problem is the instrument. Okay. So I think often what people have as a problem is unrealistic expectations. So people and that's why I try to be very transparent. And again, go watch some of my live practice sessions, and you'll notice what quality I get in the practice in comparison to live performance, and what it takes for me to get to that level, and what kind of practice and etc. But look, I am 28 years old. And where I am is a result of over 20 years of playing. Now, that does not mean that every single person has started at age of 7 or age of 8, but it takes time. What my goal is to make sure that whoever is watching me or learning from me, for that person, it does not take 20 years to get there. It might be 15 years or 10 years or whatever I can cut from. So I give you a little shortcut. That being said, you're not gonna developing a professional quality sound. Like, it takes a lot of time, and I would not look at the outliers. Once in a while, you see a very young musician who has abnormal level of skill set in one area or the other area. So might be abnormally fast fingers or abnormally high register, and that's, I don't think that should be taken as a rule. That should be taken as an exception, and that's not usually a good example to look at. So look, have a routine. I change and adjust my routine every 6 months. So if I take a new exercise, I always give 6 months. Now that's a bit of on the long side. Some people suggest that stick with something for a month and then see if you make a progress. I prefer sticking to something for 6 months before I can truly say what benefit it makes or not. So practice your tone. If you do not like your tone, I guarantee you, I did a video comparing 4 instruments, and people commented that they were surprised about the sound of that wide instrument in the back. It actually does not sound really good. It's kind of trashy sounding, to be fair, but I can still get a reasonable sound with it just because the skills are there. So even with that $250 instrument, you can get some sort of a quality in terms of a sound. So you need to go practice over and over and over again without necessarily paying too much attention for equipment. I rarely see a kid in high school who's grown out the instrument. I barely ever seen a kid. There's once in a while you get an outlier again. You see a kid who's clearly outgrown an instrument. I played such a crappy instrument up until 14. My instrument was not even a euphonium. It was that German. It was all kind of dented and rusty German tenor horn, baritone horn. I played that up until 14, and I was winning competitions with that thing. Now looking back at it, it was kind of crappy. The first compensating euphonium that I got was, I believe, when I was 18 or 19, right before I went to do my undergraduate. I had a 3-valve euphonium. I didn't even have a 4-valve euphonium. So, and I was still winning the competitions and international competitions at some point. So, look, the equipment might not always be the correct answer. Just
can I say one more thing? One thing too with the person who asked this question is what I would recommend too is if they're not feeling it, and if they're not feeling comfortable with instrument and mouthpiece, just to try some different things. Make sure you're trying to change something. If there's a reason why you don't feel comfortable with your mouthpiece, for example, try to look at what you're doing with that. We talked a little bit about mouthpiece placement and things like that. Try to look at the mechanics of your playing. If you're not feeling comfortable with something, but you keep practicing and you're not changing anything to try to get rid of that discomfort, trying a different placement, working on your buzz a little bit more, or many different things. The point that I would try to bring forward is try to change some things to see if any of those issues that you might be having can get better.
Yeah, I agree with that. And even potentially considering changing. I've seen cases where somebody is really struggling on trumpet. Just to give an example, it doesn't have to be trumpet. Really struggling on trumpet, no sound, no nothing, and you give them a tuba mouthpiece, and suddenly out of nowhere they become a pretty decent player. Suddenly the tuba sound is actually pretty good. So again, there's a point of maybe, hey, it is worth checking a different instrument out. I just don't think the problem is, I don't think when I was a kid, I wouldn't be able to correctly tell whether the problem is inside my technique or the instrument. I don't think you would be able to tell that. It's very unlikely that instrument is so bad that you cannot progress on it. It's very unlikely. That's what I can tell. But that being said, watch some of my videos on YouTube. I made sound and register. I just cannot emphasize enough. It will take you a little bit of time, and it's detailed, very compact videos and a lot of information to process, but watch it. I provide music, all kinds of stuff you can follow along. So I wish somebody did what I'm doing when I was growing up, because I was just inventing bicycle over and over again up until I kind of figured it out more or less. That being said, I see a question, a quick one. It will be a quick answer that I really wanna get to before we skip to others. Mouthpiece stuck into the instrument. What is that device called? Somebody's asking, got their mouthpiece stuck. What is that device called? I cannot. All the band directors have it. I cannot remember.
I just call it a mouthpiece puller. That's what the general. That's just generally what I call it. Is mouthpiece puller. I can't remember the exact brand. There's a couple of different ones that are out there. One almost looks like a wrench, and then you put it on there. I don't see these too much anymore, but you put it on there and it sort of pops it out whenever you press down on it. And then the other one is this machine where it brings one bar up as you're spinning the screws, and then the bar makes contact with the mouthpiece, and then you keep moving the screws, and then it pops the mouthpiece off. I can't remember the exact brand of that. I just call it a mouthpiece puller.
Now, let's say that person does not have an access. By the way, the username is a Muffin Man. I like that a lot. So.
I always wondered if you knew the Muffin Man. Apparently you do.
So, in case that person does not have an access, he or she does not have an access to a puller, any...
Let me tell you a couple of things. I've done some wild... What? I'm talking.
Yeah, get closer.
Come closer?
Yeah.
Closer? Okay. Do you need me to just talk louder, or should I just talk louder? Okay. I've done some really, really wild things whenever I didn't have a mouthpiece puller, or even sometimes when the mouthpiece puller doesn't work. Sometimes I'll try different temperatures, run some cold water over it or warm water over it, or let it sit for a while and try to do that. But you have to be careful with what you do to remove the mouthpiece. I would suggest, if you can't get it out pretty easily, is to go to a technician or a music store where they could remove it a little bit easier for you. But I've done all sorts of things, like taking two drumsticks together and trying to yank the mouthpiece out. I've taken off my shoe. I have these hard leather shoes with the heel on the shoe, and I would hit the mouthpiece at different times. Once again, I don't recommend it at all, but I've done some really wild things to try to get a mouthpiece out. But you have to be careful, though, because there's a couple of times where you go to hit it with something and it pulls apart a brace that's holding part of your instrument together, and that brace will break off, and then you'll have to really get it repaired then. I've also had a band director from high school who was trying to pull the mouthpiece out and tugging so hard to get the mouthpiece out that the brace broke, and it dug into his hand, and it gave him just a horrible hand injury as well. So you have to be careful when you're trying to remove a mouthpiece.
I've heard some funny stories about mouthpiece removals as well. People, brass musicians trying to take it out and actually hitting their faces and knocking their teeth out to the point where they cannot play anymore. Imagine how horrible would that be. You try to take out the mouthpiece and you end your playing career. So. But that being said, never had a stuck mouthpiece in my life. I'm always curious how that happens. Would you leave your mouthpiece in an instrument for like a couple of weeks and then forget about it? But either way, that's probably.
Yeah, sometimes there's a pressure that could be built up. I'll see students sometimes too where they're trying to play and they're pushing their face and their head too hard against the mouthpiece, and it'll really jam that in there. Most of the time you could just do a little twist and then you're able to pull that mouthpiece out. But sometimes it really gets it really gets stuck inside there. It just does.
So I'm gonna suggest a very unorthodox method here. Now, it might not work if that's a tuba you're talking about. It might not even work if that's a euphonium you're talking about. It would definitely work if you live in a very, very cold region. But here's the deal. If you have a trumpet, put it in the freezer and leave it. And I'm not joking. I'm being serious. Put it, if you have a larger freezer, or either if it's a euphonium but you have a very large freezer, put it in your freezer. I'm not going to give you a 100% shot, but there's a very, very, very good likelihood you'll be able, after a couple hours, you'll be able to take it out. The temperature, once it's hot, it swells up, inflammates, and then the metal expands, not inflammates, that's the metal, so that wouldn't be the right description, but it expands, and when it's cold, it shrinks. So at some point, it's at the point where it's stuck, so it would be a good idea to put it somewhere really, really cold that the metal would shrink, and you'll be able to most likely put it out. I've done that with mouthpieces, and it works like mouthpiece rims. When you need to unscrew them because they get stuck. Yeah. It's funny. There's a funny story. I've got a new rim. It's actually right here. I got like a little rim for my mouthpiece to try on, and the company was generous to send it for free, and I could not try it because I could not unscrew my old rim. So I got in touch with the actual company, and I was like, hey, thank you so much for a rim. In regards to the feedback, is there any chance you would know a way how to unscrew that rim? So you just put it in the freezer. Like, huh? Just put it in the freezer. Okay. And it worked like magic. So that's what I've been suggesting to other people. Okay, let's move on to some more questions. Okay, there's a question. Where was it? Kevin is asking, can you discuss the difference in intonation, timbre, and projection between a concert euphonium and a marching euphonium? Well, I would assume that would be. Let's make this a two-part question. I would assume we're talking about not only what the difference in sound is, but what the difference in approach should be. So
he said intonation, timbre, and what was the other?
Projection between a concert euphonium and a marching euphonium. You want to give us a lead?
Yeah. It's been a good while since I've played on a marching baritone. The types of marching baritones that I played on weren't the greatest ones. Just the quality of the materials and the musicianship that makes that instrument can cause a lot of issues in comparison to a euphonium that's of better quality and better craftsmanship. Things with intonation, you can find a lot more issues with trying to get a marching horn in tune than a euphonium or more quality euphonium. The timbre is gonna sound what I would say that the timbre of a marching baritone is probably gonna sound a little bit brighter than the timbre of euphonium. The euphonium, whenever I play on my horn, my horn specifically has a little bit more of a darker sound compared to marching baritone. And for projection, was that the other thing that they mentioned? Projection. It's just there's a difference. It's just difference with sort of how you're hearing it, with the euphonium going upward and the marching horn going forward. I'd be curious to wonder how much projection and what would be superior. Obviously, if you're going to play to a stand or something like that, if you're playing a competition or you're playing a halftime show, or if you're doing in a marching band or something like that, and the projection going forward this way, is going to be obviously a lot better because of the direction of the bell. But I wonder if you get more of a projection from a better euphonium, no matter if it's pointed forward or the bell up. I'm not certain on the technical aspects of that. I'd like to believe that you could get a lot better projection and a lot better quality of sound in the projection from a better euphonium than a marching horn.
Yeah, and that is actually correct. You definitely can get more projection, and I've tried some marching euphoniums and baritones, and there's definitely a difference between an expensive high end. I've tried some Jupiters, which are close to $3,000, and I've tried a couple of cheaper euphoniums, marching euphoniums that are like $500, and there's a pretty big gap in terms of projection. It's because of the brass they use and the amount of brass they use differ. Now, in terms of intonation, that's an important one. But here's the deal. This is how I would approach it personally. When practice, if you're looking for sound and intonation and etc., like marching euphonium is not necessarily the best way to approach it. Practice your regular euphonium for technical aspects. When it comes to marching euphonium, by far the biggest obstacle and the most difficult thing you're going to have to do is figure out the ergonomics and movement. That's the only reason why you'd play a marching euphonium, is when you march and you work and you play. So that's the skill you should be predominantly focused on. So in regards to working your intonation in terms of recognizing the pitch and being able to adjust by lipping up and lipping down, you're much better off just doing that in a practice room with your regular euphonium. You'll be able to translate that skill easily. Now, marching euphonium and regular euphonium might have different tendencies. So it would be a good idea to just check it through with a tuner and with a band to make sure you know that there are potential alternative fingerings that you can use. Projection is one of the benefits of having the marching euphonium. So if one of those three areas, intonation, projection, and sound, if I had to pick the least of my concern, that would be projection, just because the bell is going straight. I know you're competing with trumpets, but you're always going to be competing with trumpets. We're competing with trumpets when our bells are going up, and you have this massive advantage of you going with a straight, with a bell forward. So in terms of projection, again, practice it on your regular euphonium. It will transfer directly to your marching baritone. Make sure the ergonomics are sorted. Intonation, again, just figure out the tendencies of the instrument. Now, in terms of the sound, again, you need to realize, I don't know a scenario where you're trying to think of a traditional sound on a marching euphonium. That's just not the scenario. You're thinking of just blast your air and be in tune. That's how you should be approaching. You're not trying to get a beautiful, round, dark. No, you want clarity. So that'll be your articulation, your mechanics, and don't worry about having a beautiful, round sound. This is just not the purpose of the marching euphonium. So again, those are the skills would be I would practice with my regular euphonium rather than marching baritone. Again, they will directly translate, but I would not try to get same type of timbre with marching instrument. I will be looking for the not brightest, but the most clear, the most crisp sound on a marching euphonium you can get. So almost baritone-like with. And obviously it's going to be slightly darker, but that's what I would be looking. And your vast majority of focus should be your ability to walk, move in certain directions while maintaining as much of fundamentals and control in your upper body. Is that something you agree with? Huh? All right. Let's go to some more questions. By the way, Mother's Day coming. Is it the same day in the U.S.? Is it tomorrow?
No, I think it's next week, I believe.
Because it's a
Mother's Day weekend. I think it's Sunday of next week. So what is that? The 10th, maybe? The 10th?
Because I'm pretty sure, in like the way in some of the countries it works, at least with Lithuania, it's the first Sunday of May. So the first Sunday of May is tomorrow. But hey. But that being said, either way, it's coming soon, so don't forget to buy your mother a nice card and make sure to send it and get a nice bouquet of flowers or some candies. I just saw your mom saying hi, so just for some reason I remembered. By the way, hello, Ms. Dingfelder. Okay, let's go to some questions. A lot of people giving shout out to you. Everyone saying hello to Second Euphonium. His name is Mike, by the way. Just you can call him Ding, but also known as Mike. Okay, Bobcat mouthpiece puller. Is that?
That's it, Bobcat.
Okay. Here's a question. I do very good on auditions when I practice for months, but when I only get a few days to learn a piece, I do very bad. Do you have any tips? Okay. I'll lead this time. So do not expect the same quality, because it's just by itself. You kind of figure this out. When you practice for months at a time, you'll be able to prepare stuff way better. That being said, when you shorter time, you have to figure out what you're going to be focusing on. You know that you're not going to be comfortable. That's one thing you'll have to realize, that comfort is not going to be in question. Okay, so mark everything on the piece of paper. Mark your breaths. Make sure you know all the details. Where you're going to be breathing. Where's the tempo change? Make sure you're mapping out everything on the pen, because it's not going to be sitting in your head within 2 days. So you want to have as many directions on the paper, on the piece of music as possible. Okay, that'll help you to take one thing from your focus, and you'll be able to concentrate a little bit more on other aspects. Now, make sure that the approach to your practice is play everything slow. Try to put as many repetitions as possible. And the skills that should complement this kind of scenario is obviously sight reading and etc., which is going to help you to learn things faster. And sight reading, you need to know your scales and all that kind of good of stuff. So that is going to help you with learning things faster. And other than that, put yourself in this scenario as much as possible. Like if you get yourself into situations where you have to prepare in a couple days for auditions, once or twice a year, it's unlikely you're going to get good at it. Try to do that as much as often. Perform as many different pieces. Go through as much literature as possible. And other than that, make sure you have thought through what you're going to say in the auditions. You know that you know the requirements outside of the piece that you're preparing. So you try to get as much preparation for all the variables, considering the short amount of time. So something you'd like to add?
Yeah, for sure. So with what this person is saying, it seems like the person is saying that they can practice something, and if they have a decent amount of time, they can be successful with that. But whenever they don't have the amount of time, then there's issues with the playing. So what I challenge that person to think more about is just working on fundamental skills of playing. You can take a piece of music and really work on it and sound really, really good, and then you move on to something, and if you don't have a lot of time with it, you can sound kind of bad on that. But that's not the approach that I take. I don't like studying things for a really long time and stuff like that. I mean, I wouldn't work on a piece of music for months and months and months and months. What I would make sure to do is to work on fundamental musical skills and technique, and then no matter what piece of music that I get, I am going to feel comfortable with that piece of music. So, for example, working on your scales and being prepared with all of those, range exercises, flexibility, arpeggios, different types of tonguing, advanced tonguing, double tonguing, triple tonguing, making sure your single tonguing is there. Working a lot on exercises like that's why the majority majority of the time that I spend practicing is practicing my technique and exercises and things like that. So no matter what piece of music I run across, I'm going to be prepared with the skills to be able to play that piece of music with less amount of time. We play pieces of music to the extreme. You know, there will be pieces of music that we get that we have to perform right then and there from sight, and we don't have an opportunity to practice at all on that. So if I don't have an opportunity to practice at all on anything, I need to make sure that my skills are worked on, and those fundamental skills are so important. Don't think necessarily such a long time period of working on something. Think spending a lot of time on those fundamental skills.
Actually, that's a really good point. I should have probably mentioned that. Just it kind of led me to thinking. What you're referring is the short amount of preparation is actually our main job. That's what we do, more or less. So we're most of the times when we have concert is lack of preparation. We have to prepare, not necessarily lack of preparation, but very short amount of time for what we have to prepare.
And your listeners might not even know that some of those recordings that you see from our section, we might only have 2 or 3 days, and sometimes even less, to work that out before we have to play them in a concert and a performance. We have like 0 time.
Yep. And here's the deal. Now that you were talking about, I just realized my whole routine is actually designed. My whole practice routine is designed on that principle. And sometimes people know me for notoriously warming up and practicing before every single. He's laughing because he knows what I'm talking about. I'm the guy. People get sick listening to me practice scales, because no matter what kind of scenarios, there's that hour-long routine that I'm gonna get in every single day, whether it's before concert or before a practice session, just because maintaining those fundamentals. And my routine is designed to touch every single subject, every single scale, every single interval through a variety of exercises while practicing. So the exercises and the areas I'm working on is my respiratory system, my fingers, my coordination, and the exercise selection always gives me a variety of looks that I'm going to be seeing in all the pieces. So at some point, one point or another, whether I'm practicing fingers, tongue, I'm going to cover my major scales. I'm going to cover my natural minor scales, harmonic minor scales, melodic minor scales. I'm going to cover my whole tone scales. I'm going to cover all of my arpeggios. I'm even covering my blues scales nowadays. So, and this is all happening in triple tongue, which Drew is always laughing about. But this is what I'm saying. I'm notorious for having that routine, and I put it in no matter what. So, but that's targeted towards specifically these scenarios. So making sure that your basic skills and that you're always in shape. So considering you don't have time to prepare the texture of the piece, at least you're always in shape, and you're in position to do the best you can with those. Okay. I'm gonna get another restriction on Facebook. Jesus. Apple what? Apple pie. Oh, that's very American.
I think this one for you. You always, we're way overdue. We're like 55 minutes or so into the stream. I can't believe I hung in there for as long as I did without a snack. But he always yells at me for having candies or crunchy cookies and stuff like that. So I probably found the healthiest thing that I have in my cupboard, and that's the Larabar. Have you ever had a Larabar before?
No, but don't even go there, because you know what happens when I try bars.
There's only 6 ingredients in there. There's only 6. I think you would love this. What are the ingredients? What are the 6 ingredients? It's got dates, almonds, apples, walnuts, raisins, and cinnamon. That's it.
But does it have a grapefruit flavored seltzer water in it?
No.
Well, that's a no-go. Either way, let's go back to questions. Eat your apple pie. Lucas is asking, advice on starting a private studio teaching young low brass players. Yes. First of all, you need to build up your reputation and trust. So just having skills is not enough. It's tricky. It's pretty competitive. So social media is very helpful. And one thing that I was always targeting with my euphonium channel, my YouTube channel, not euphonium channel, YouTube channel. Not only my computer fried, but my brain apparently fried, so can't even speak anymore. That being said, one of the things I was always targeting, my videos were never targeted towards getting the vast majority or huge amount of views. They were targeted towards a very specific niche of people who are trying to seriously learn, not just have fun. I'm trying to make this as entertaining as possible, but what I'm trying to make is squeeze in a lot of dense information so people have an access to a lot of educational materials, and that's where I started building a good amount of online students. It's because people see something they can relate and something that solves the problem. And obviously I go into a little bit more of a general area just because I cannot concentrate on a specific person or specific scenario when I do my educational videos. That's where the online lessons come in. But that's how I'll build up a studio. Now in this case, you have to decide whether you're trying to build up a studio in terms of live teaching, in-person teaching, or online teaching. In this case, I don't think in-person teaching would be at least for next week, month, or a couple of months would be the best idea. But try to get yourself out there. Show how good of a young teacher you are. Get in touch with high schools, middle schools. Offer to do a free recital. Go do a free recital, a free masterclass, a display masterclass, and get your name around by constantly going around places. And especially you mentioned that you're trying to get low brass students. Go to every single school. Just say, hey, I'm a young player. Here's a recording of me. I would like to come in, do a little masterclass, do a little bit of teaching. Everything's free of charge, and if you could let me do that, that would be great. And that's where I would start off. And just bear in mind, it takes a little bit of time, but that's a worthwhile investment. Wait, what? I cannot hear you. I'm not getting it.
I don't want to talk with my mouth's full of the Larabar, but that's a great question of starting a studio and start teaching privately and things like that. First, you have to be able to relate to younger people. I mean, that's clear. You could be the greatest player in the entire world, but if you don't have the skills, the skills to be able to take the knowledge that you have and be able to transfer it in the correct way to the person that you're trying to teach, it doesn't matter how good you are. So really working on your, for a lack of a better word, your people skills. You have to have good people skills to be able to be a successful and effective teacher. What you said about reaching out to the local school districts and things like that, and putting yourself out there, asking to be put on lists of recommended teachers for the different school districts and stuff like that. You can do that quite a bit. To really build up a good studio, you have to give a lot of yourself sort of upfront, especially if you're first starting out. They're not going to be familiar with you. They're not going to know your teaching style. They're not going to know too much about you. So you have to do a lot of free things. Give an opportunity for your first lesson as free, just so they can get a chance to see if they want to continue to study off of you and things like that. If you're a great people person and you can communicate with younger people and you give that free lesson, you know, a lot of people, they're not going to pass up on something free, you know. So that's going to set you up in the right way. Also, be careful of your price and what you're going to charge as well. You need to make sure that, you know, if you want a larger studio, or if you want to get started in that, you have to make sure that the price reflects the quality of teaching that you're going to give to them. And not just that too, but another important thing to remember is, you know, sometimes players don't have, and really good players don't have the means to be able to pay for private instruction. And the more that you could help out people, the better. My private teacher, whenever I was in high school, I didn't have a lot of money growing up, and a private lesson was something that we couldn't really afford as a family. But my private teacher, who I had, barely charged me anything. He basically said to me, and I guess he saw potential in me as a student, he basically said, you know, as long as you practice and do the things that I tell you to do, and if you work on these things, you know, basically don't worry about paying me hardly anything at all. And that was such a help to me. I don't know where I would be today without him. My private teacher literally and probably saved my life. And he gave me an opportunity where I really couldn't afford to take part in that opportunity, but he still helped me. So you can't lose a sense of that. There's some teachers that'll take as many students as possible, and they'll try to get as much money as possible from those people. And I can't agree with that. You know, there's different circumstances for all sorts of different people, and you should be willing to give.
Yeah, and look, in my personal experience, because I'm one of the younger players wherever I go, whether it's festivals, your reputation is everything. Okay, and the word spreads around. So I do agree. Definitely, look. Always, if the kid is not trying, then you know you don't want to be giving, you know, a free of charge lessons, just because it's a very bad investment of your time. But once in a while, if you see a scenario like that, yeah, absolutely. And look, it eventually pays dividends. Having a very good player in your studio, it can work a lot to your benefit in terms of reputation. If that kid is not, if he cannot afford to pay you, but he's going to competitions, if you have one of those kids, make sure that not only you're pushing and giving those lessons for free, but you take him to him or her to the competitions. Okay, make sure that you're it's not necessarily trying to squeeze out some use from that kid, but it also benefit you and that kid in that sense, even if you're not charging. Make sure you're displaying how much progress your students are making as well. That's an important thing. And again, we live in a small community, so the word spreads around pretty quickly. So if you do good enough job, people will start asking questions and in regards to the lesson. So question from Ellen again. Now I know, again, I'm gonna be butchering the name, but do you know the tuba player from Philly Orchestra, Carol, and I cannot pronounce her surname, Jansch? Do you know who I'm talking about or not exactly? But either way, I know the player, even though I cannot pronounce the name. So I just remember, never had personal interactions, but I just remember the first time I was an invited guest at the ITEC event was in 2012 in Linz, Austria. And there was a lot of really, really good European and American players there. And there was one tuba recital where I believe Les Niche played and Carol played. And Les was playing this super virtuosic piece, and it sounded fantastic. I believe it was called Shine or something like that. Don't quote me on that. And Carol was playing Over Rainbow. but everyone was so super impressed with her. Everyone was talking about her because she had a really really nice sound and really really good interpretation. So that year the ITEC was filled with overwhelmingly technical kind of player, so everyone was trying to outdo each other in terms of how fast and high and technical they can play. And I think she was one of the few players who just picked a very nice slow melody, and afterwards I just remember everyone was talking about hey, did you hear that I don't know by the time was she or did she already have a position at Philly, but I definitely know who you're talking about. So a quick question, motivation question. What are you doing if you don't have any motivation to play the euphonium one day? Well, what I'm doing is I still go and play it. But that being said, let's be a little bit serious. So it's absolutely normal, especially when you're a kid. It's hard to find that feeling where where you have that almost like some people call it a runner's high or whatever you call it, that state where you're focused and you're just super happy to go and practice instrument. It has to become a functional part of your routine. And look, let's get a little bit scientific here, and I'm not the biggest expert here, but there's such a thing as a willpower muscle, and it's located, it's a front part of your brain, and the more you practice it, the better you get at it, and the less you practice it, the worse you get at it, and then it can be retrained. But each little decision you make, each time you don't want to practice, and you just make yourself go practice, it becomes. You're laughing.
That just sounds. You might be right. That just sounds like totally made up.
Oh no,
totally made up thing.
No. Look, I promise you, frontal cortex or something like that. I cannot give you. I read books, like not listen books stuff, but I promise you, I give you my word, I'm not making this up. There's a part of the brain that is responsible. It's called the willpower muscle. I kid you not. So making decisions, making sure you make the correct decision, and it normally requires going a little bit of overtime. So you're tired, but you still go play for 10, 15 minutes. Next day you play extra 20 minutes. So it'll become easier over time. So for me, it does not require motivation anymore. It used to, not anymore. It becomes such a... Look, sometimes I don't want to brush my teeth. I'm just a little lazy, but I sometimes, but I go and brush my teeth. It's not that hard. Practicing has become like brushing my teeth or like eating a breakfast. It's such a natural part of my routine where I don't have to rely on motivation. That being said, going for a jog in the morning and just thinking through what I'm going to be practicing, how I'm going to be practicing. I'm imagining that I'm going to pick my euphonium and the sound that is going to come out, and all these little mental tricks, they help. But it eventually, what I would recommend is not necessarily relying on motivation as much. Rely on functionality. Know what you're going to be doing. Have a set amount of routine. Don't focus on time. Don't go with I need to practice an hour a day. No. Have certain amount of exercises. These 5 exercises I need to complete no matter what, no matter how much time or how little time is going to take me. And set yourself a routine that as a must. Even if you're a little tired, or a little demotivated, you have to complete it. You do that over and over again, it becomes so much easier. And the willpower muscle, not made up. Check it out. Fact check me on this. I promise you I'm not making this up. It's a part of the brain located in the front. When you grow up, as you grow up, that part becomes larger. But it's very important that when you're a younger musician, that you try and develop that habit. I'm sure it has a different scientific word. I call it the willpower muscle, but I'm promise you not making that up.
I'll say something just to answer directly to the question and how it applies to me myself. I'm not necessarily motivated to play. In a way, I am. I mean, I love music. It's a part of me. It's a part of my life. I love doing it. I will keep doing it, and I'll keep playing until I notice decline in my abilities. You know, I play professionally right now. If it gets to a point where I can't be able to achieve the things at a professional level, then I won't play professionally anymore. If I can't keep my abilities going to the point where I can't take part in community ensembles and things like that, then I won't be in those community ensembles anymore. If it gets to a point where I'm practicing myself and I can't achieve just, simple practicing or simple songs and pieces whenever I'm by myself, then I won't play anymore. So I will basically play as long as I can physically and mentally play at those different levels. And I'm sure when I stop playing, I will still want to play, but I know it'll just get to a point where I won't be able to play anymore, and that's just a part of life.
Yeah, but look, you've been telling stories and on these live streams as well. Look, you said whenever I wanted to go get a dinner, my mom used to tell me, you need to go practice, or she would make you practice. Look, that's a certain habit, and that's development of willpower. So if somebody makes you or you have to do it, you maybe don't want to do it, but you go practice for hours and hours, whether your mom, dad is making you or whether you're making yourself. Eventually you go to college and you realize that nobody has to make you do that, because that has become such a natural skill where you're not relying necessarily on motivation. I understand what motivation is, and I know the days where I have motivation. Those days, normally best practice sessions. I'm happy, everything's sounding better. But look, it's not a sustainable type of state to be in. It's being angry, being happy, being sad, being motivated, being tired. These are all not sustainable. They change. Sometimes you're happy, sometimes you're a little bit less happy. Sometimes it's physically related, sometimes it's not. None of these are sustainable like by itself. So functionality is what is sustainable. That's the way. You're laughing again.
I was just thinking, you know how I say that for sure I could beat you in an arm wrestling match? Now I'm pretty sure that I could probably beat you in a willpower muscle match. I'm pretty sure I can do that.
I'm pretty sure you wouldn't. Nah. No. Bet on. I'm
pretty sure my willpower muscle is stronger than yours.
Nah. I've got a little competitive issues here. I'm a little too competitive. That being said, that's how I approach it. We'll take one or two more questions and we'll go, because this is becoming a little over an hour. Again, my apologies for some sound problems. I'll get that sorted. It's just I've been doing some overtime work, and my equipment has been frying, and Mr. Mark Zuckerberg has temporarily restricted me from using my own group for no obvious reasons or reasons unexplained. So this week is not going too smooth. That being said, we really appreciate everyone tuning in to this video. Again, don't forget to show some support by giving this video a like, whether you're watching this live or not. Subscribing, of course. Let's answer a few more questions and we'll wrap this up because this is going over an hour now. This one I really liked. Malcolm is asking, here's a question. I've gone roasted on my vibrato on euphonium in a bunch of trumpet masterclasses. Why do they despise euphonium vibrato so much? Now, there's two ways to look at it. I personally, if you go to masterclasses and official events, here's the deal. I don't think most trumpet players despise vibrato. I think here's the scenario, and I might get a little bit of smack from our euphonium community about that. 90% of vibrato use is very, very distasteful, in especially in amateur levels. Not because people have a bad sense of musicianship, but oftentimes you're not very aware of what kind of stuff you're doing with vibrato. What I see with euphonium players, we have this weird tendency to focus on on things that does not resonate with any other instrument in brass community. We look for the darkest, roundest sound possible. Name me another instrument that is looking for the most dark, muffled sound. That's not what a trumpet player is looking for. That's not what a French, not even tuba player is thinking. I want to get as low frequency sounding sound as possible. Everyone's looking for clarity, cleanliness, all that kind of quality. So we have a very weird set of requirements set out. Now, the traditional way of playing, a lot of vibrato is being incorporated, and a lot of younger musicians are often trying to replicate that. Now, it takes a little bit of time to learn how to control vibrato, not how just to create, but how to control it. So there's a way how you can use it in a very I don't know whether distasteful sounds a little harsh, but in not necessarily best fashion. And normally what I see with a lot of younger players, there's no in between. It's on or off. Either you have vibrato on every single thing, or you don't have any vibrato at all. So, and if you're playing Planets, an excerpt from Planets, and you're adding a bunch of vibrato on those notes, or something that is symphonic or etc., it's just not how it works. So normally when you go to a lot of trumpet environments, it's just the approach on vibrato is slightly different. If you go to the high level players and the professional level players, you'll notice that trumpeters use vibrato. It's often a little bit more subtle, and our repertoire is very Danny Boy like. That's the problem, which requires a lot of very dense, fast vibrato, and then you go and try to play something like Napoli Variations or something that is a trumpet book, and you add a bunch of that vibrato. That's when you start getting a little bit of backlash. That being said, I don't know the specific circumstance you're referring, so it might just be a circumstance where you get a bunch of mean people, a bunch of mean trumpet players. But I think it's a little bit of miscommunication. I don't necessarily think trumpeters despise vibrato. I just think often we tend to misuse it. I love vibrato. I use it all the time, but you'll never notice. You'll always notice that I use it very consciously. Not always, but where it applies. So it's a very useful skill, but you need to learn how to apply it correctly.
Yeah, great description too. Just something I could add personally, and maybe another reason too is the more, especially if you're in an ensemble setting, the more you use vibrato, the harder it is for other people to get in tune with you. And that could cause issues with intonation across the band and things like that, with harmonies and chords and that sort of thing. I actually had back in I used to play in the brass band for a first chunk of time, and then I took a break, and then now I'm back with the brass band. But in my first chunk of time with the brass band, I actually had one of the trumpet players come up to me in it was either at intermission or after the performance, and they basically said, hey, can you stop using vibrato and stop using vibrato so much, because I'm finding it really hard whenever we have these exposed passages where it's just me and that other player, that player can't get in tune with the vibrato that I was using. And I, of course, I stopped. I stopped using as much, or not using it at all. But there's a time and a place for it. If you're in an ensemble setting, it's probably not going to be a great time to be expressive and use vibrato, unless you have an exposed line. Unless you have a small solo section where you could be more expressive with that, or if you're playing a solo work yourself with unaccompanied or with a piano, then sure, you can take those liberties with your vibrato and sort of do as much as you want. But you have to be concerned whenever you're playing in a larger group with your intonation when you're using vibrato so much.
Yeah, and something you'll notice in those videos where I post, just pay attention to when and how we use vibrato. Notice when we use it, because we do use it, but it's specific moments. We're not using it all the time. You have to recognize where you're playing the melody line, if you're part of a chord. So it's very important, self-awareness. So make sure it's if you're playing the traditional euphonium solos all the time. Even though I'm not, even on those solos, I'm not a big fan of just one type of vibrato, but something to keep in mind of. Just, you need to be a little bit more conscious. It's the most underused and abused technique I hear all the time, because most often all the top players, they use it kind of the same way, in a very tasteful, well selected manner. Everything else is either on or off most of the time. So that's, I think, where a lot of stereotype is coming from. Couple more oh yeah, and that's I'm starting to see some great questions. Let me a couple more questions, and we'll wrap this up. Marcus is asking, have you guys been playing Brussels Requiem by Requiem, or how I'm not pronouncing that correct, by Bert Appermont yet? No, we haven't played. We don't play a lot of traditional brass band music. Freya is asking. Let me find the question. Okay, I'm on 5th chair euphonium, but next year I want to get a better chair. What should I practice for? Okay, so a very good question. I like this. I think my recommendation, with every single chair you step up, there's going to be a certain technical requirements and certain musicianship or leadership requirements that go up. So normally, in terms of technique, the most significant thing you'll notice, that each time you step a chair up, your part goes higher. that would be one of the technical solutions. Not technical solutions, but technical things you'll notice quite a bit. And in terms of the musicianship, the closer you get towards that first chair, the more of a leadership role it becomes. So you have to become really good at following not only your colleagues but also the conductor. So those would be very few quick things, but you have to overall bring a level of your playing. But from musicianship standpoint, these would be very significant changes from the 5th, 4th, 3rd, 2nd, and 1st chair. By the way, 5th chair euphonium, what kind of band is that has a 5th chair? I'd love to know. Just curious.
Yeah, no, you just got to keep working on your skills, and if you're conscientious about your routines and your practice structure that you have, and the types of things that you're working on to improve, then you're going to get higher up in those chairs. But we talk all the time about scale studies, flexibility, range, all of those types of things. To be a first chair player, you need to make sure that your set range is correct. If you can't play sort of that, what do you call it, the practical range? If your practical range is
functional,
that's it. If your functional range is not there, and you can't play up into those higher passages, and that's what's required of a first chair player, then you're not going to be placed in that seat. If there's so many things that you can work on to improve your rhythmic sense, your abilities to subdivide, your intonation. Are you working and are you mapping out and are you understanding your tendencies of what sounds on your horn or in tune or not, and how to correct that? Your technical skills, your tone quality. I mean, there's so many things that you could consider to work on to move up in those chairs. It's just you just have to have a plan. What I would recommend is trying to notice where your struggle spots are. What are some of the aspects of your playing that are the weakest, And a lot of times, whenever you work out those weaknesses, it really bumps your true abilities up. And as long as you're working and you're practicing smart, you're mapping things out in a systematic way, you're going to continue to improve. You might not jump all the way up to first chair, but if you keep with those things, you should see some improvement and some movement.
I definitely agree with that. Okay, 2 more questions. Pinky swear, 2 more, then we're done, and we're gonna address one person, and that's actually a good point. So let's start with that. Somebody disagreeing with the use of vibrato in the band. I disagree. All of the professional brass bands in Europe use vibrato consistently. First of all, let me just quickly address, and I'm really not trying to be mean, but all the bands you're talking about, they're not professional. They're playing at a very, very high level. They're fantastic musicians, phenomenal. Professional brass bands mean they're getting paid. There's a salary or services. All of them are considered amateur. All the competitive brass bands, they're called amateur brass bands. They play, again, don't make sure, I want to make sure you get that correctly. It does not reflect their playing level, because they play at a very, very high level, really phenomenal level. But they are not called Black Dyke or that's not called a professional brass band. Okay, that's called an amateur brass band, even though they play fantastic. So here's the deal: the repertoire they play is a very traditional repertoire that I'm referring to. So Philip Sparks, all that kind of stuff. They use vibrato all the time, and they use it in a very unique way, which helps a lot with projection. But the intonation, in terms of the European style amateur brass bands, and what you're gonna get in the military bands, professional orchestras. And even in the brass band, by the way, we don't even have tenor horns. We use French horns. And the repertoire we play is very, very, very different. If you're going to start using traditional vibrato on our swing series, guess what? You're definitely going to get a tap on the shoulder from your trumpet colleague saying, hey, by the way, that vibrato. So you have to pick a good spot how to use it. And outside of that scenario, of that British brass band style, I'm not talking only about British brass bands, but British style brass bands. No other ensemble will ask for that kind of use of vibrato. Again, not saying that I dislike it or I do like it, it's just the style that they play in. No other ensemble, whether it's an orchestra, wind band, military band, will ask or require or would benefit from that type of use of vibrato. So our brass band is not a traditional British style brass band. We play a very different repertoire. In fact, we barely play any traditional pieces. So just something to keep in mind. Again, love the British brass bands, the Coreys, Black Dykes, Fodens, Grindthorpe. I lived 5 years in that region, and I love those brass bands. It's just a completely different type of circumstance. Kayla, do you have any tips on how to flutter tongue? Here's the deal. Do you have any intake before I go there? Do you want me to start off with this one, or you?
I can flutter tongue myself. It's hard to describe on how to get another person to do that. It's a tough thing to explain.
And I can tell you why, because again, this is my take on this. It's something to do with the language and the letters that you're using. So here's how I think of letter R, but not in an American way or English, but the European, Eastern European. I'm thinking of. Okay, this is how I flutter tongue. Okay, so. And can you actually do that? I'm just curious. Yeah. But
I think of like an H. I think of like an H sound to get it started, and then the R once it. It's hard to just starting just go. You have to start with like a. It has to be like a beginning point to it with me.
But that's how you flutter tongue. Is that how you flutter tongue?
Yeah.
Yeah, so think of and then just add a buzz and you'll get your flutter tongue. Okay, so again, if you're not comfortable with that or whatever, again, Mike has an American version.
And I'm sure too, different cultures too will have an easier time depending on what the language is. Like if you think of Latin America, South America, probably Spanish, and Portuguese, and things like that, where they might tend to roll their R's and things like that whenever they're speaking with certain words in their language, is they might have an easier time to be able to do that as well.
And the person that I left the last question is actually just texting because I think he's getting annoyed that we haven't answered the question yet. But hey, I was paying attention, Aaron. So we're answering Aaron's question. So that was the last question. Okay, here we go. I play euphonium as a primary instrument and trombone as a secondary. I'm in the top concert band for euphonium, but bottom jazz band for trombone. How do I get better at trombone while maintaining euphonium skills? Okay, so it's gonna be all about planning, structuring your obviously, in order to get a trombone, to get better at trombone, you'll have to practice trombone. That time will have to come from somewhere, so it will obviously come from your euphonium practice. Okay, there's a different approach to how you use air in a small manner. It's not that much of a difference in terms of how the flexibility works and etc. You can push a little bit more air. It's a little less resistant on trombone, but outside of that, the main difference will be fingers. Okay, so in order for you to get better at trombone while maintaining euphonium skills, you'll probably have to spend a little bit more time on trombone than euphonium. So have some sort of a maintenance routine planned out for euphonium. So you know that the main difference will be your fingers. So make sure that whenever you're practicing, you're doing vast majority of your exercises like flexibility, bending, and range exercises on your trombone. And whenever it goes back to fingers, just have one or a couple exercises where you do your scales just to make sure you have that maintenance working. If you're a good euphonium player, which you describe yourself to be, and it looks like that's the case, you're not gonna forget how to play euphonium just like that. 10 minutes every single day playing the scales or finger patterns. Promise you're not gonna forget how to play euphonium. On top of that, if you practice your trombone over and over again, I promise you're gonna get better at your euphonium. You're probably gonna get better at range. You're probably going to get better at flexibility. On top of that, you're going to get better at trombone. So just have a little maintenance section left for euphonium where you just slowly play through the fingers. In order to make sure you're not decreasing your finger abilities, use very, very firm fingers when you practice. Really smack those valves just to make sure your brain remembers all those finger patterns, combinations, and transitions. And other than that, just focus a little bit more for that time period on your trombone playing, and that will level itself out where you'll be able to progress in your jazz band as well. Mike?
Yeah, just one quick thing, because you said a bunch with that. I play the euphonium and the trombone. The one thing that I really think about is primarily I spend most of my practicing and most of my playing professionally with the euphonium. So most of the time I'm spending, pretty much 95% of the time is on euphonium and 5% of the time is on trombone. But my one main concern is whenever I get over to the trombone, the most of the concern that I have with that is just making sure that I am working on my intonation and the slide positions. It's easier for me on the euphonium to get certain things lipped to where they need to be and stuff like that. The trombone is just one big main tuning slide. So the thing that I focus on the most is making sure that I'm hitting certain positions, and those positions are the in-tune positions that I need to. So most of the other stuff with my trombone playing, I worked it all out on euphonium and things like that. It's just getting comfortable with the playing mechanics of the trombone. My tone I don't have to change up too much just because the instrument the difference of the instrument. When I go and I play on a trombone, it's going to sound like a trombone. When I go and play on a euphonium, it's going to sound like a euphonium. I'm not changing too much to change the type of sounds that I'm getting. I'm going to rely on the instrument to change the sounds more so. It's just getting better with the mechanics and slide positions and getting comfortable with those types of things. I like to do a lot of scales on the trombone, and I like to do a lot of intonation exercises to make sure that when I'm putting my slide in a certain position, it's the in-tune sound that I'm going for. I don't think about changing too many other things.
Yeah, I agree with all the stuff, and hopefully this gave you an answer, because I've noticed at least Aaron asking this question at least 3 times, and I wanted to leave it to the end. Okay, that being said, thank you everyone for tuning in. Again, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a like, share with your friends, and we're going to be doing some more of this in the upcoming weeks. And that being said, don't forget to get a nice card for the Mother's Day and send it out to your mom, because I'm probably going to be trying to figure something out. Sending a Mother's Day card to Lithuania is slightly harder than sending it, so but I'll have to figure something out. But that being said, thank you everyone who tuned in. My apologies for that little sound issue. I'll try to get that worked out. I'm having a rough week with my technologies and all the equipment that I've been using. I'm getting that redone and the computer rebuilt, because it's been frying. Hopefully, and again, just a quick reminder to Mr. Mark Zuckerberg, can you please unrestrict me from using my own groove for... I know I violated something. I'm just not exactly sure. I think I'm pretty sure that it has to be those crunchy cookies. I told you to bring soft dough cookies. I'm pretty sure Zuckerberg does not like crunchy cookies either, or Twizzlers. Either way, that being said, have a great rest of the weekend. Have a good start to the upcoming weekend. I'll see you with the regular video Monday, 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Take care, friends. Bye-bye.